All right. Welcome to another narration of mine. Settle in for a moment. This is where the voices I carry meet the version of the truth most people avoid, and where the things we uncover tend to stay with us long after the story ends. Only the brave souls and the fearless ones stay until the end. I got the acceptance email at 3:17 a.m. I was awake, of course. I hadn't been sleeping much. Insomnia wasn't new to me, but that night it had a flavor, that acidic unease you get right before something changes, the kind of twitch in your gut that tells you the air's about to go still. The subject line just read, "Congratulations. You have been granted long-stay clearance for residency." No country, no logo. Just that sentence. The email address was encrypted gibberish, something like unit 08x at cleared.ciz. The body of the message had no links, no attachments, just a .pdf. And of course, I opened it. The document looked like a normal visa, very official, watermarked with my photo, the one I took for my passport months ago, printed perfectly. There were several seals at the bottom, but none from any country I recognized. No flags, no Latin characters, just strange curling letters like hooked thorns, burned into the paper like they'd been cauterized in. Long stay entry. Indenture Class G. Valid until never. Issued. Redacted. Entry. Location. Redacted. Region. Redacted. Restrictions. Do not disclose. You know how sometimes your body knows more than your brain? The second I read the word indenture, my chest tightened like something invisible had curled around it and squeezed. I don't remember applying for anything like this. I never even applied for a visa. I was a freelance designer, living back home with my mom and little sister, Elsie, while saving up for my own place. There was no job, no offer. Nothing in the email hinted at what this was even for. Yet somehow, the seal at the bottom of the document pulsed when I stared too long at it. I swear to God, I watched it throb as though something behind the page was breathing. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I printed it out, tucked it into the bottom of a folder, and went to bed. 3 days later, my mother disappeared. She was supposed to come home around 6:30 p.m. She worked part-time at a real estate office, 15 minutes away. Never once in her life had she been late without a call or a text. I waited until 8:12 before I called her. Straight to voicemail. 9:07. I called her boss. Oh, she left on time. Seemed a little off, maybe. Tired. By 10 p.m., I called the police. By midnight, I was in a waiting room, clutching my sister's hand, while 2 officers told me it was probably a misunderstanding. Adults go missing for a few hours all the time, they said. But by the look in their eyes, I could tell they didn't believe that either. Let me tell you about the last call she made. It was at 6:42 p.m. That's when her phone sent its final signal before it went dead. The tower it pinged off of wasn't even in our state. It was in the middle of nowhere. I mean that literally. It was in an undeveloped region, just miles of dead farmland and state forest. Except when I tried to look up the coordinates that showed on the case file, they didn't exist. Google Maps redirected me to an error page. My GPS refused to load it. Every time I tried, my phone got hot in my hand, scalding even. Once, it shut down entirely and never turned back on again. I started getting nosebleeds every time I read that location number. I'm not even prone to them. Elsie's the one who noticed the noise first. It was faint at first, like a wet whispering through the walls at night. I told her it was just the house settling, maybe pipes, but it got worse. One night, I woke up, and she was standing in the hallway outside my door, just staring. Her face was pale and wet. She looked like she'd been crying, but couldn't remember why. She said she heard Mom calling her from under the floorboards. I thought she was dreaming, until I started hearing it too. It started around 3 a.m. most nights. A low voice, almost melodic. It never said full words, just fragments. Whispers, like someone trying to speak through a cracked TV screen. Let the roots, deeper still. LLC. Don't forget me. The mirror in the soil. And then silence. When I ran to Elsie's room, she was curled up under the bed, eyes open, whispering back to the dark like she was answering. That's when I started to suspect something was wrong with her memory. It started subtle. She'd call Mom's phone without realizing she was doing it. She'd be humming one of Mom's songs, and when I asked her what she was singing, she'd look confused, like the melody had never even touched her lips. One afternoon, she turned to me and asked, "Do we have a mom?" I laughed at first, but she didn't. "I don't remember her," she whispered. "I remember someone. But it's wrong. It's like her face won't stay still. Every time I think of her, it turns into something else." I asked her to draw what she remembered. She used to be good at that. What she handed me made my stomach drop. She'd drawn a shape in charcoal. Just a shape. No human features. No eyes. No mouth. Just a smooth, gray oval where the head should have been. Long, bent limbs like a spider's. But it was wearing our mother's necklace, an old gold chain with a tiny locket I'd seen my entire life. I recognized the pattern in the background too. It wasn't wallpaper. It was the seal from the visa. She had never seen it. I never showed it to her. I kept that thing locked in a firebox. But there it was, almost exact, etched in the wall behind the thing in her drawing. I tried to report it. I showed the police. They were polite, but they looked at me like I was a cracked windshield about to shatter. One officer, though, Officer Greeley, pulled me aside when his partner wasn't looking. He was pale, young, looked too green to be talking to families of missing persons. He waited until we were alone before speaking. He leaned close and whispered, "Don't try to find her." I stared at him, not understanding. He looked around, lowered his voice. "I've seen this before. Not often. Just twice in 6 years. A person disappears, GPS anomalies, memory loss in close family members, and it always starts with paperwork. Paperwork you can't trace." I asked what kind of paperwork. His lips twitched. "You'll know. You already do, don't you?" I didn't answer. He nodded like I had. And then he said something I haven't stopped hearing since. If she's already speaking to the floors, it's too late for her. But maybe not for you. I asked what he meant, but he just walked away. 3 days later, Elsie forgot our last name. She wrote it wrong at school. Her teacher called me. When I asked her why, she blinked slowly and said, "Because that's not my name. You gave it to me, but it's not mine anymore." She's 8. She was never like this before. Last night, I heard her talking to the floor again. But this time, the voice was answering. It said my name. I haven't slept. And the visa. It moved. It was at the bottom of the firebox. But when I opened it tonight, it was on top. The paper was damp, sticky, like something had licked the edges. And the photo, my photo, was different. My eyes were all black now. No whites. It pulsed again when I touched it. And now there's a new line at the bottom. Entry. Date confirmed. November 23rd. Prepare. Elsie's memory is getting worse. She doesn't recognize me sometimes. She keeps asking where Mom is, even though I told her. But each time I say she's missing, her eyes go blank. Like she hears the word, but not the meaning. I don't know what's happening to her. I don't know what that country is. But something is coming for us. I can feel it through the walls. It's under the floor, behind the wallpaper, inside our blood. And it knows my name. The first time I noticed the shadow, it wasn't in a place shadows should be. It was early morning. Elsie had fallen asleep on the living room couch again. She'd been refusing her own bed lately. And when I asked why, she only whispered, "It's too close." I didn't press her on what it was. Anyway, the living room was quiet, blue with early November light. The house creaked like it always did, like something in the walls. Remembered pain. I walked past the hallway mirror and saw it. Not in the reflection, in the mirror itself. It was standing inside the glass. A man-shaped smear, elongated, like someone had taken a wet finger and dragged his form down the mirror's length. It looked like he was melting inside the silver. A suit twisted with too many seams, as though it had been sewn shut around his arms and pulled from the inside. His head was tilted. Too far. I blinked, and he was gone. Later that same day, I checked the firebox again. The visa was gone. I tore everything apart, dumped folders, emptied drawers, flipped the mattress, even clawed through the garbage with shaking hands. It wasn't anywhere. The paper, the seal, the photograph with the black eyes. Gone. But that night, I found something else. On the back porch, nailed into the doorframe, was a strip of what looked like skin. Pale, leathery, almost translucent. It had the same curling characters from the visa burned into it, arranged in a circle. The moment I looked directly at them, I heard whispers, not in my ears, but behind my teeth, like the words were vibrating through my jaw. It wasn't until I touched the strip that I realized it was still warm. Elsie had a dream that night, or at least she said she did. I'm not sure anymore what's hers and what's being placed into her. She came into my room around 3:30 a.m., holding the old Polaroid we took on her 5th birthday, the one where Mom is laughing, icing on her cheek, Elsie in a dinosaur costume. It used to be one of her favorite pictures, but she wasn't smiling. She handed it to me and said, "He said this isn't real. He said these people are wearing us." I asked her what she meant. "He said, I'm not the first, Elsie. He said, I'm the 5th. I nearly dropped the photo. My mouth went dry. She crawled up beside me and whispered, "The first Elsie didn't listen. She tried to follow Mama. But there are rules in the soil." I didn't sleep. When I checked the photo again in the morning, Mom's face was gone. Just an empty space with 2 burned holes where the eyes had been. That morning, I went to the library. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew the internet wasn't going to help anymore. My browser kept crashing every time I tried to search the visa keywords. Just froze up or redirected me to blank pages. At one point, I ended up on a page that just said, "You are already there." In Arial, all caps, no links, no back button. The library at least felt analog, safer. Until I met the archivist. He was sitting behind the reference desk like he'd been poured there, long face, long fingers, pale gray eyes that didn't blink nearly enough. I asked if they had any records on undocumented regions, off-the-map townships, secret settlements. His face didn't move much, but I swear, I saw the corners of his mouth twitch slightly upward. Like I'd said the magic phrase. Without a word, he rose, taller than I expected, and led me through a section of shelves I didn't recognize, one that curved slightly, left the longer we walked. Eventually, we stopped at a thin, black book. No title, no label. He handed it to me without speaking. When I looked back up, he was gone. I opened the book and immediately tasted metal in the back of my throat, like blood. The pages were filled with diagrams of bodies, human shapes, but wrong. Each diagram showed figures, opened like flowers, spines coiled outward, jaws extended far past anatomical possibility, ribs drawn like spiral staircases. Below each figure was a caption in that same thorn-lettered language I'd seen on the visa. But I recognized One of the diagrams. The figure had its head tilted at a broken angle, a twisted suit, stitching up the arms and across the chest. It was him, the man from the mirror. There was one English note scrawled next to the page in shaking handwriting. Concierge. Gate born. Do not follow it past the threshold. It remembers your shape. I slammed the book shut, and for a second, I thought I heard something shuffle between the shelves behind me. Something wet. I didn't turn around. When I got home, the smell hit me immediately. Sweet rot. Like old meat or spoiled jam left out in the sun. I found Elsie in the backyard. She'd dug a hole. Not just a little one, a pit, almost 3 feet deep. Her hands were muddy and raw, her nails cracked. She was humming something tuneless, staring down into the hole with her head cocked. I asked her what she was doing. She didn't look up. They told me the way home is down. I asked who. She finally turned to me. Her eyes were wide and flat. They said you're not my real brother, she whispered. I froze. What did you say? She looked confused, like the words had surprised even her. I mean, you feel like my brother, but something's wrong, like you're only wearing him. I felt like vomiting. I pulled her away from the hole, but she screamed the second I touched her. A blood-curdling shriek that rattled through my skull and set my teeth on edge. Not a child's scream. Not hers. It was older. Deeper. Something else screamed through her mouth. When I finally calmed her down, she didn't remember any of it. That night, I locked the house. Windows, doors, even nailed the back gate shut. I was sure something was trying to bleed into our reality. Or maybe we were bleeding out of it. The lines were blurring. I didn't know where we were anymore. And the more I tried to hold on to things, my mom's voice, my sister's laughter, even my own reflection, the more they seemed to slip through my fingers like dirty water. I fell asleep for an hour, maybe 2. And I woke up to find the visa back on my desk. No envelope, no explanation, just sitting there. This time, the paper was pulsing faster. The characters shimmered slightly, like oil on water. My photograph had changed again. My mouth was gone, just smooth skin where lips should be. And now, there was a stamp at the bottom, just below the seal. The threshold opens. Stay still. I heard footsteps in the attic last night. We don't have an attic. And I'm beginning to think we never had a mother either. The night the walls began to breathe, I bit through my tongue. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't even asleep. I was lying flat in bed, lights off, just staring at the ceiling. It had become my routine, waiting until Elsie drifted off, then staying awake as long as I could, listening for footsteps in place footsteps shouldn't be. But this night, the air was heavier, not thick like fog or humidity, dense, like it had weight, like someone had vacuum sealed the house from the inside, and my lungs had to fight to move against it. Then I saw it. The drywall inhaled. It didn't crack or creak. It swelled, like lungs filling with stale breath. Slow, deliberate. The entire room shifted with it, like I was inside a giant sleeping creature. I sat up fast. Blood rushed to my ears. The smell was back. The sweet, rotting sugar stench, thicker than ever, as if someone had stuffed decaying roses into the vents. And then I heard the voice again. Entry granted. It wasn't outside the room. It wasn't inside it either. It was under me. At exactly 3:03 a.m., my phone lit up. No ring, no vibration, just light. A new notification on the lock screen. Boarding pass issued. Region: Delta Thief 13. The app wasn't one I'd installed. No app name. No icon. When I tapped it, the screen froze, turned black, then displayed a countdown. 03:03:13, 03:03, 12:03, 03:11. It was counting down from 3 days I tried smashing the phone, tried snapping the SIM, even took a hammer to the battery. The next morning, it was back on my desk, screen on countdown intact. I made a decision. If I couldn't stop it, maybe I could find it, wherever it was leading me. Maybe I could beat it there, or at least understand what was waiting. So I drove. I took Elsie with me. She'd stopped speaking entirely by that point. She'd begun drawing in circles, actual circles, not loops. Her notebooks were full of tight, concentric spirals, thousands of them, every page. She didn't fight me when I loaded her into the back seat, just stared out the window with vacant eyes and whispered something once under her breath. "They're going to wear you too." I followed the coordinates from the police report, the ones from Mom's last phone ping. I memorized them. They made me bleed, but I remembered. The drive took 5 hours. We crossed 3 state lines, and then we found it. No signs, no fences, just a gravel road that veered off the highway and disappeared into skeletal woods. The GPS blinked once, then shut off. I don't know what I expected. A government bunker, a town, a hole in the ground. What I found was worse. We came to a clearing that shouldn't exist, unnaturally flat, ringed by dead trees. In the middle of it was a building, if you could call it that. A single concrete structure, windowless, leaning slightly left like it had been poured wrong. There were no doors, just a narrow vertical slit down the center of one wall, just wide enough to walk through sideways if you turned your shoulders. The air around it hummed, literally. A low, constant vibration, like something was spinning just out of phase with reality. Elsie started shaking. She pointed at the structure and cried for the first time in days. "That's where Mama went," she sobbed. But she didn't walk out. I asked her what that meant. Her answer chilled me. She didn't walk out. Something else did. I should have left. Right then. I should have turned around and driven us until we ran out of road and time. But I was already too deep. I walked toward the structure. The slit in the wall wasn't dark. It was white. A pale, blinding light pulsed from inside, like a sterile heartbeat. I turned sideways and slipped through. The air inside was cold and wet, like the inside of a mouth. The hallway was narrow, endless, impossibly straight. As I walked, the floor beneath me grew softer. It began to give slightly, like flesh. The lights pulsed in rhythm with my steps, and on the walls were faces pressed into the concrete like fossils. Some I recognized, some I didn't. But one was my own. I don't remember what happened after. That I woke up hours later, sprawled outside the building, Elsie beside me, clutching her drawing pad to her chest like a shield. My phone was in my pocket. It had one new image, a boarding pass like before, but now it showed the date, November 23rd, boarding time 3:03 a.m. Departure point, home. I didn't speak for 2 days after that. Neither did Elsie. I thought maybe we'd escaped it. Maybe it had let us go. But last night, she brought me another drawing, a picture of our living room, drawn in blood-red marker. And in the center of the picture was me, sitting on the couch, staring blankly forward. But I was split open. My body peeled down the middle like a jacket, and something else was climbing out of me, something with too many fingers, and no face. When I turned to look at Elsie, she was already asleep, but she was whispering again, barely audible. The visa isn't paper. It's permission. Then she smiled in her sleep. A wide, wet, unnatural smile. And I realized something in that moment that made my stomach turn cold. That wasn't Elsie anymore. The night I realized Elsie wasn't Elsie anymore. Something in the house went still. So still, I thought time had stepped out for a moment and forgotten to come back. No breathing from her room. No pipes sighing in the walls. No wind. Just a hush. Heavy and unnatural, like the silence inside a coffin that hasn't been opened yet. I checked her room anyway. The sheets were pulled tight across the mattress, tucked in perfect hospital corners. Too perfect. She never made her bed like that. The air smelled cold, metallic, almost surgical. And on the pillow, delicately placed, as if by a careful hand, was a tooth. Not one of hers, longer, thinner, slight curve, translucent at the tip, like something that had grown in darkness. Under it was a note written in black ink that spidered across the page like veins. 1 unit has been reclaimed. Thank you for your participation. I felt nausea twist up the spine of my throat. Participation in what? I didn't sleep. Not that I could. Every time I blinked, I saw the image from her drawing, the thing climbing out of me, peeling my body like fruit skin. I wondered if that was what this was all leading toward, if I was meant to split open like a chrysalis for something else to step through. The countdown on my phone ticked down mercilessly. 36 hours left. The house changed that night. Not drastically, subtly, like it was rearranging itself in its sleep. Light switches moved. Corners that used to be sharp softened into gentle curves. Doorways tightened, narrower than they had been the day before. And every reflection in the house was wrong. Not horrifying. Not monstrous. Just one beat off. Like a smile that arrives half a second too early. My reflection in the hallway mirror stood still a moment longer after I walked away. Just after midnight, a knock came at the door. Soft, polite, like a neighbor wanting to borrow sugar. I froze halfway down the hall. Something inside me whispered, "Don't answer." But some other part, some obedient, broken part, pushed me forward. My fingers shook on the deadbolt. I opened the door. And he was there. The man in the crooked suit. He wasn't behind glass now. He wasn't a smear. He was fully formed, standing on my porch, as if he'd been waiting years for this moment. His suit was stitched wrong, seams puckering like healed scars. His head tilted so far to the right, it looked like gravity was slowly trying to lower it onto his shoulder. But it was his smile that hit me the hardest. Too many teeth, all small and flat, like milk teeth, collected in a jar. "Good evening," he said, voice smooth as wet clay. "May I step inside? The threshold doesn't like delays." My lungs shrank. "No," I rasped. He blinked slowly, one eyelid dragging behind the other. "Not ready yet? That's all right. Preparation is part of the ritual." I tried to slam the door. He caught it with 2 fingers, 2 thin, bone-white fingers that bent the wood like it was warm wax. "You've done well," he murmured. "Your compliance rate is above average." "I didn't comply with anything," I whispered. "Oh," he said gently, "but you did. You kept her. You kept the little vessel safe until the convergence phase. She's nearly ripened." My stomach twisted. "Elsie?" His smile widened. Something cracked in his jaw. "Names are temporary. Functions endure." I stepped back without meaning to. His eyes, if I could call them that, reflected nothing. Just void, empty black, where pupils should have lived. He leaned in slightly. "The final segment requires you present. 3 a.m. sharp. Wear something you don't mind losing." Then he released the door and walked backward into the dark. Backward, without turning around, his limbs bending wrong, as if joints were only a suggestion. When he vanished into the night, the silence returned. and from upstairs, I heard a soft giggle. Not Elsie's. Something older. Something patient. At 2:14 a.m., I found a new message on my phone. Your destination has been prepared. Below it was an attachment. A map. Not a normal map. This one was drawn in black lines that twisted like veins, ending in a symbol that looked almost like an eye with a needle pushing through it. And the place marked on it was my house. Not a city. Not a region. Just my house. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. Something whispered behind me. I turned too fast and nearly fell. Elsie stood at the top of the stairs. Her feet pointed inward. Her head tilted, not unlike his. Her eyes unfocused, as if she were looking at someone standing behind me. "Can I show you my picture?" she asked softly. Her voice wasn't her voice. I swallowed. "Okay." She smiled a stretched smile and held up her drawing pad. It wasn't paper anymore. The pages were thin, gray, and soft. Skin. She was drawing on skin. And the picture she showed me, it was a door. A tall, thin slit. Just like the one in the concrete building. Beneath it, she had drawn a shape crawling out of the opening. Long fingers, no face, its legs bending backward. But the worst part? At the bottom of the drawing, written in a child's shaky hand, "This is where you become useful." The countdown hit 03:02:58. I had less than a minute, and every light in the house went out. The walls inhaled. Something moved toward me in the dark. At 3:03 a.m., the house opened. Not with a creak, not with a crash. It peeled. Right down the middle, floor to roof, wall to wall, as though some great unseen scalpel had slit its spine. The air shimmered with something like static, but thicker, charged with intention. Behind the seams of drywall and insulation was not wood, not piping, not structure. There was a corridor, not built, not placed, grown. The hallway stretched in both directions, impossibly long, slick and pulsing like something still alive. The walls weren't made of brick or metal, but of some dark, fibrous flesh. And in the far distance, lit by a pale light, stood the silhouette of the man in the crooked suit, waiting, arms open like a host at a dinner party. The phone in my pocket buzzed once. One final message. Customs processing initiated. Do not resist. Elsie stepped past me without a word. She was humming a lullaby I couldn't place. Her skin was too pale now, almost translucent. Veins like black thread mapped beneath the surface, twitching with each pulse. Her eyes were blank, shimmering ever so faintly in the dark. She walked into the hallway, barefoot, her toes squelching softly in the living floor. The man didn't move, just watched. She turned her head once to look back at me, and something in her face shifted. The bones didn't match anymore. Her features sat wrong, like someone was still learning how to wear them. "Are you coming?" she asked. But her mouth didn't move. The words came from behind her. I should have run. I tried. But the house was gone now. There were no walls behind me, no door, no sky. Only that pulsing corridor, stretching outward like a vein through some terrible unseen anatomy. I had no choice, so I followed. The air grew thicker with each step, heavier, like walking underwater. The corridor bent slightly downward, curving into a spiral that made my head spin and my stomach turn in on itself. We passed doors, each one different. One was covered in hair. Another blinked when we walked by. One breathed in slow, pained gasps. And behind one, I heard my mother's voice, soft, muffled, pleading. I stopped, pressed my ear to it. "Please," she whimpered. "He's wearing me. He doesn't know how to blink. He doesn't know how to stop smiling. Please, I'm still in here." Then came the sound of nails on the other side, scraping, not in panic, in rhythm, like she was tapping out something old, a lullaby, maybe. The same one Elsie was humming. I stepped away. We reached a chamber, massive, spherical, walls lined with glistening membranes like the inside of a throat. The center of the room pulsed with an enormous shape, an organ the size of a car, tethered by wet cables that pumped and spasmed with no rhythm I could understand. The man in the suit stood beside it, arms still outstretched. "This is the port of entry," he whispered. "You are now standing in the throat of transit." Elsie, if that's what she still was, walked forward and knelt at the base of the organ. I followed her gaze. It wasn't a heart. It was a gate. And it was opening. Skin peeled back in 4 directions. A cavity split in the center, revealing a black tunnel inside. Not just black, anti-light. A place that devoured vision, meaning, memory. The smell was unbearable. Salt, rot, wet leather, and rust. And something else. Something familiar. Burnt paper. The smell of the visa. The man spoke again. "She is now complete," he said. "The vessel is processed. She will be welcomed by the soil." I stepped forward. "Give her back." He smiled. "She was never yours." He turned his face toward me, and I saw now that there were hundreds of eyes stitched into his cheeks, his forehead, his neck. Each one blinked out of sync. Each one looked like mine. "You still have value," he said, stepping closer. "There are places inside the country that require guidance, hosts, language." He held out something. My visa. It had changed again. Now it was stamped. Status, permanent citizen. And beneath that, in small black print that pulsed like an ulcer, body will remain behind, mind will migrate, soul optional. I felt something then, a pull in my gut, in my spine, like my name had been called by something too far away for sound. Behind me, the hallway was collapsing. Closing, I had one choice: step forward or disappear entirely. I took the visa because part of me already knew. I had already crossed. The moment I opened the email, the moment I read the seal, the moment I listened to the floorboards whisper my name, there was never a country to visit. There was only transition. I don't remember crossing through the gate, just the feeling of falling inward, not down, but in, as if my body folded into itself like a hand turned inside out. And now, I'm here, not in a place, not really, but I exist here. I see through things now, through mirrors, through dreams, through the fibers in the walls where the paint peels back just a little too far. I smell like burnt visas and old teeth. I think I'm learning how to blink again. Sometimes, at night, I see Elsie in the old house, still humming. She's taller now. Her head leans just slightly too far to one side. And when she sleeps, she draws pictures on the skin walls. All of them are me. I hope someone reads this. I hope someone sees the signs early. The email, the seal, the whispers behind your name. If you get that visa, don't open it. Don't look at the seal too long. Don't show anyone your photo. Don't let them know you're listening. And above all, never follow the hallway past the point where the walls begin to breathe. Because the country isn't a place. It's a hunger. And it already knows your name.